I was 98 years old when my hand finally touched the metal box, and the first thing I smelled was blood. Not real blood, memory blood, the kind that lives in your nose 79 years after you stop seeing it on black sand. My grandson sat beside me on the floor of my small apartment in Tokyo. He thought we were looking at old coins. He was 16 and believed war was something that happened in movies. I envied him for that. The box was small, rusted at the edges, no bigger than my palm. Inside were 3 letters I wrote when I was 19 years old. Letters I never sent because the men I wrote them for were already dead before the ink dried. I opened it. My hands shook so badly that Kenji had to help me lift the lid. The first letter was dated February 8th, 1945, 11 days before the Americans came, 11 days before Iwo Jima stopped being an island and became a grave. I was 19 years old the day they handed me a rifle and told me I was already dead. They did not say it that way. The officer who stood before us in the barracks used different words. He said honor. He said duty. He said emperor. He said we had been chosen for a great task, that history would remember us, that our families would be proud. What he meant was, you will die on a rock in the middle of the ocean, and your body will never come home. I understood this. We all did. But understanding and accepting are different things. And in those first days, I kept thinking there would be a way out. Some last-minute change of orders. Some miracle. Some mistake. There was no mistake. The troopship took 12 days to reach Iwo Jima. 12 days in a hold that smelled of diesel and vomit and fear. Men wrote letters. Men prayed. Men sat silent, staring at nothing. On the 7th day, a boy from Hokkaido hanged himself in the latrine with his own belt. They cut him down before most of us woke up. I only knew because I heard the officers arguing in low voices, because I saw them carry something wrapped in canvas up to the deck, because the boy's bunk stayed empty for the rest of the voyage, and nobody spoke his name again. That night, I started my first letter. Mother, I wrote, and then stopped because the word felt like a lie. How could I be her son if I was already a ghost? I wrote that I was well, that the food was adequate, that the other men were in good spirits. I wrote the things censors wanted to see, the things that would pass inspection, the things that meant nothing. Then I tore out a second page and wrote different words. If you are reading this, I am dead. I am sorry I cannot come home. I am sorry I will never see you again. I am sorry for all the things I wanted to say and did not. I folded that page and hid it in the metal box they had given us for personal effects. The official letter I gave to the male officer. He glanced at it, nodded, put it in a sack with 100 others. I never saw it again. I do not know if it reached her. I hope it did not. I hope she spent those last months not knowing. When the island appeared on the horizon, someone said it looked like a pork chop. Someone else said it looked like a beetle. To me, it looked like a fist, black and volcanic, punching up from the ocean. Mount Suribachi rose at the southern end, its slopes barren and dark. 2 airstrips ran across the center like scars. Smoke drifted from vents in the rock where the island was still deciding whether to be a mountain or a volcano. 21,000 Japanese soldiers were already there. I would be number 21,001. We landed at night. The black sand swallowed our boots, pulled at our legs, made every step a fight. It was not sand like beaches at home. It was volcanic ash, ground down over centuries, fine as powder and heavy as guilt. The sergeant who met us at the shore did not smile. He pointed inland toward a dark opening in the rocks. Down there, he said, that is where you live now. The tunnels. They had been digging for months before we arrived. 18 kilometers of passages, some said. Others said more. They went down 5 levels, 6 in some places, connected by narrow shafts and steep stairs carved into the rock. We descended. The air changed immediately. It became thick, wet, hard to breathe. It tasted of sulfur and stone, and something else I could not name then but understand now. Fear. It tasted of fear. Lamps burned at intervals, casting yellow light that made the walls look like skin. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. Men moved past us without speaking, their faces hollow, their eyes distant. One of them bumped into me. He did not apologize. He did not even seem to see me. He just kept walking, his lips moving silently, his hands trembling. We were led to a chamber where bunks lined the walls in tiers 3 high. The wood was rough, unsanded, splinter-prone. There were no mattresses, Just bare boards and thin blankets that smelled of mildew. "Find a space," the sergeant said. "Get settled. General Kuribayashi will address you tomorrow. I found a lower bunk near the back. The man on the tier above me was from Osaka. He showed me a photograph without being asked. His wife, his baby daughter, 3 months old." "Beautiful," I said, because what else could I say? He stared at the photo for a long time. Then he put it back in a tin candy box and pressed it against his forehead. "She will never remember me," he said quietly. I did not answer. There was no answer. That night, I could not sleep. The tunnel breathed around us, groaning with the weight of rock above, clicking and settling like something alive. Men snored, men wept, men whispered prayers to gods who had already abandoned this island. I took out the metal box and the pencil they had given us. I wrote by the light of a lamp burning low 3 bunks away. I wrote about the sand, about the smell of sulfur, about the boy who had hanged himself on the ship. I wrote things I could never send, things that would be called defeatist, things that could get me shot. I wrote because if I did not, I would forget I had ever been human. The next morning, they assembled us in a larger chamber deep in the tunnels. Hundreds of men packed together, shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same stale air. General Kuribayashi stood on a platform made of ammunition crates. He was shorter than I expected, older. His uniform was clean but worn at the edges. His face was tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. He did not shout. His voice was level, almost gentle, which made his words more terrible. "This island is 8 square miles," he said. "The Americans have 1,000 ships. They have 200,000 men. They have aircraft that will turn the sky black. They have artillery that will turn the ground to dust." He paused. "Let that settle. We have 21,000 men. We have no ships. We have no aircraft. We have these tunnels, and our rifles, and our will." Another pause. "You will not leave this island alive. Neither will I." That is not defeatism. That is mathematics. Someone in the crowd shifted. Someone coughed. No one spoke. "But we can decide what our deaths buy." Kuribayashi continued. "Every day we hold this island is another day the Americans cannot bomb Tokyo. Every ship we sink is one less ship attacking our homeland. Every man we kill is one less man marching toward our families." His voice grew quieter, which made us lean in, strained to hear. "The Americans expect us to die in banzai charges. They expect us to waste ourselves in glorious suicide. We will not. We will make them pay for every meter. We will make them bleed for every tunnel. We will make them remember the cost of stepping on Japanese soil." He looked across the crowd, his eyes moving from face to face. "You are already dead. Accept that. Then decide how many of them you will take with you." He stepped down. The meeting was over. I stood there long after others had filed out, staring at the empty crates where he had stood, trying to make my mind accept what my body already knew. I would die here, on this island, in these tunnels, and the best I could hope for was to make it mean something. That night, the man from Osaka did not come back to his bunk. I waited. Others came and went. The lamp burned lower. Still, he did not return. In the morning, someone told me what happened. He had gone to the officers, told them he could not fight, that he had a wife and daughter, that he needed to go home. The officer had taken him outside the tunnel entrance, made him kneel on the black sand, put a pistol to the base of his skull, and fired once. His body was still there at dawn. They left it as a lesson. I went to see it. I do not know why. Perhaps because someone needed to witness. Perhaps because I needed to understand what happened to men who asked for mercy. He was face down in the sand. The back of his head was gone. The tin candy box with his daughter's photograph lay beside him, still closed, untouched by blood. I picked it up, opened it. The baby smiled at me from the photograph, unaware that her father was dead, that she was already an orphan, that she would grow up never knowing his face. I put the box back beside his body and walked away. That night, I wrote my second letter. "I'm afraid," I wrote, "not of dying. I have accepted that. I am afraid of dying alone. I am afraid of dying for nothing. I am afraid that when the end comes, I will cry for my mother like a child, and no one will hear me." I folded the letter and put it in the metal box with the first one. The days blurred together. We dug. We carried supplies. We reinforced tunnels. We waited. Officers inspected our positions. They reminded us of our duty. They reminded us that surrender was not an option. They reminded us what happened to cowards. Sometimes at night, they let us go up to the surface. The sky was clear and cold and infinite. The ocean stretched in every direction, black and empty. I would stand there and think about my mother, about our house, about the way cherry blossoms fell in spring, about all the small, ordinary things I would never see again. One night in mid-February, a man standing beside me said quietly, "Do you think they will come soon?" I did not know who he was. I had stopped learning names. There was no point. "Yes," I said. "Good," he replied. I want it to be over. We stood in silence for a long time. Then the ground trembled, just slightly, just enough to make us look at each other. It came again, stronger, longer, not an earthquake, something else. The officer on watch ran toward us, shouting, "Inside! Get inside! Now!" We scrambled for the tunnel entrance. Behind us, the horizon lit up like dawn, but it was midnight, and the light was orange, and it was growing brighter. The bombardment had begun. The Americans had come. I made it 5 steps into the tunnel before the first shells hit. The concussion knocked me forward. My ears went silent, then filled with a high ringing that drowned out everything else. Men were shouting, but I could not hear them. The tunnel walls shook. Dust fell in thick curtains. A lamp shattered somewhere behind me. I crawled deeper, away from the entrance, away from the light that was no longer orange but white, so bright it hurt even through closed eyelids. The shelling went on for hours, all night, into the next day. It stopped only when the ships needed to reload, and then it started again, louder, closer, more terrible. We huddled in the deepest chambers. Some men prayed, some men screamed, some men sat absolutely still, their minds already broken. I took out the metal box. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open it. I took out a new sheet of paper and wrote my 3rd letter by the light of a dying lamp while the world above us tried to tear itself apart. "Mother," I wrote, "they are here. The Americans are here. I do not think I will survive this. I do not think any of us will, but I want you to know that I thought of you at the end, that you were the last good thing in my mind before the darkness came." I folded the letter, put it with the others, closed the box. Above us, the black sand was turning red with fire. Below us, 21,000 men waited to die, and I sat in the dark, holding a metal box containing 3 letters that would never reach home, and understood with absolute clarity that my life had ended the moment I stepped onto this island. All that remained was deciding how long it would take my body to realize it. The bombardment lasted 72 hours without stopping. 72 hours of the world ending above our heads, while we lived like insects beneath stone. I know it was 72 hours because I counted, not with a watch. Those stopped working after the first day, when the concussions made time meaningless. I counted with my heartbeat, with the gaps between explosions, with the number of times I thought I would go insane and then did not. On the surface, the Americans were turning 8 square miles of volcanic rock into the surface of the moon. Down in the tunnels, we breathed dust and waited to be buried alive. The first tunnel collapse happened on the 2nd day. I was in a side passage carrying ammunition when I heard it. Not an explosion. Something worse. A deep grinding sound like the island's bones breaking. Then screaming. I ran toward the sound. Others ran away from it. The main tunnel had caved in. 20 meters of ceiling had come down in a single piece, crushing everything beneath it. Dust filled the air so thick I could not see my hand in front of my face. Someone was calling for help. The voice was young, desperate. We dug with our hands, with helmets, with pieces of broken timber. The rock was still hot from the shelling. It burned our palms, but we kept digging because the voice was still calling, and that meant someone was still alive. It took an hour to reach him. His name was Takeshi. I did not know him. He was 17 years old. Both his legs were crushed beneath a boulder that would have taken 20 men to move. We tried anyway. We got ropes. We got timber for leverage. We got every man we could find in that section of tunnel. We pulled until our hands bled and the ropes snapped, and Takeshi screamed so loud that some men had to walk away because they could not bear to hear it. The boulder did not move. Takeshi knew. We all knew. He stopped screaming. He looked at the officer who had been directing the rescue effort. The officer was young too, maybe 25. He had a pistol on his belt. Takeshi said one word. Please. The officer's hand went to his pistol. Stopped. Went back to his side. He walked away. I stayed. Someone had to stay. Takeshi looked at me. His face was gray. Blood was pooling beneath the boulder. He had minutes, maybe less. Do you have family? He asked. I nodded. Tell them, he said. Tell them we tried. Tell them it mattered. Then he closed his eyes and stopped breathing, and I sat there beside his body until someone pulled me away because there was nothing else to do, and the shelling had started again, and we needed to go deeper. I never learned his family name. I never knew where he was from. All I know is that he was 17 years old, and he died because a rock fell on him in the dark, and no one could move it. And the officer who could have ended his pain chose not to, and so Takeshi died slow and alone, except for me. That night, I could not write. My hands would not stop shaking. I sat with my back against the tunnel wall and stared at the metal box and understood that there were things too heavy for words. On the third day of bombardment, the Americans stopped. The silence was worse than the explosions. We waited. No one moved. We barely breathed. The silence stretched, and then someone whispered what we were all thinking. They are coming. The order came down from command. All men to assigned positions. Fix bayonets. Prepare for assault. We climbed toward the surface. My legs shook on every step. Around me, men were praying. Men were crying. Men were loading rifles with hands that would not stay steady. I reached my position, a firing port in the rocks overlooking the beach. I put my eye to the opening and looked out at what the Americans had done to our island. The black sand was gone. In its place was a wasteland of craters and twisted metal and fire. Every tree, every bush, every living thing had been erased. The ground itself was smoking, and beyond the shore, the ocean had disappeared. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands maybe, more ships than I had ever seen or imagined. They covered the water from horizon to horizon, a floating city of gray steel, and I understood in that moment what General Kurobayashi had meant when he said we were already dead. You cannot fight this. You can only die slowly or die fast. The landing craft came at dawn on February 19th, 1945. Wave after wave of them. Small boats packed with men in helmets, rifles pointed skyward, heading straight for our beach. Our orders were clear. Do not fire until they reach the beach. Let them land. Let them think the island is undefended. Let them crowd together. Then kill as many as possible. I watched through the firing port as the first wave hit the sand. Marines, American Marines. They jumped from the boats and immediately sank to their knees in volcanic ash. The black sand we had cursed for months was now their prison. Every step was a struggle. They clawed their way forward, heavy packs dragging them down. More boats, more men, hundreds, thousands. They kept coming. Our sergeant raised his hand. Not yet. Not yet. The beach was full of them now. Thousands of American Marines struggling through the black sand, climbing toward the rocks, toward us. The sergeant's hand dropped. Fire. Every gun on the southern end of the island opened up at once. Machine guns, rifles, mortars, artillery pieces hidden in caves. We poured fire into the beach, and the Americans died in their hundreds. I fired, reloaded, fired again. The rifle kicked against my shoulder. Brass casings piled at my feet. Smoke filled the firing port until I could barely see. Through the smoke, I saw Marines falling, saw them diving for cover that did not exist, saw them try to run back to their boats and get cut down in the surf. I killed men that day. I do not know how many. You do not count. You just fire and reload and fire again until your hands move without thinking and you stop seeing faces and start seeing only targets. This is what they teach you in war. How to stop being human. By noon, the beach was covered in bodies, but the Americans kept coming. More boats, more Marines. They brought tanks. They brought flamethrowers. They brought artillery and set it up on the sand and began firing back at our positions. A shell hit the rocks above my firing port. The concussion threw me backward. My ears were ringing. Blood ran down my face from somewhere. Someone dragged me away from the position. I could not hear what he was saying. Could not hear anything except the ringing. He pointed deeper into the tunnel. I nodded, crawled on my hands and knees back into the darkness. The battle raged for 6 days. 6 days of Americans throwing themselves at our positions. 6 days of us killing them by the hundreds. 6 days of watching them die and keep coming and die and keep coming until I thought surely they must run out of men. They did not run out of men. On the 6th day, they raised their flag on top of Mount Suribachi. We were deep in the tunnels when word came down. The mountain had fallen. The Americans owned the high ground. Their flag was flying above us. Someone near me began to weep. An officer screamed at him to shut up, told him it did not matter, told him the battle was not over, told him we would fight until the last man. But we all knew what the flag meant. It meant we had lost the island. It meant everything after this was just dying slow. That night, I sat in a corner of the tunnel with 7 other men. None of us spoke. We had been fighting for 6 days without sleep, without food, without water except what we could suck from condensation on the tunnel walls. One of the men was the sergeant from my unit. He had been shot through the shoulder. The wound was infected. He smelled like rot. He looked at me in the lamplight. "How old are you?" he asked. 19. He laughed. It sounded like coughing. "I was 19 once. Feels like another life." He leaned his head back against the rock. "You know what I think about," he said. "I think about rice. Fresh rice. Hot from the pot. With pickles. And miso soup. That is all I want. Just one more bowl of rice." He died 3 hours later. I took his rifle because mine had jammed. I took his ammunition. I did not take his body out of the tunnel because there was nowhere to take it and no time to dig, and the Americans were already pushing into our positions, and we had to fall back deeper into the earth. By the end of the 2nd week, we had lost half the island. The Americans controlled the airfields. Their bombers were landing and taking off above our heads. Their artillery was constant. Their tanks were crushing the bunkers we had spent months building. We fought from the tunnels, hit and run, ambush and retreat. We killed them when we could. They killed us when they found us. I stopped counting days, stopped counting dead, stopped counting anything except bullets. One night, or maybe it was day, I could no longer tell, I found myself in a section of tunnel I did not recognize. I was alone. My rifle was empty. I had a grenade on my belt, and a knife, and nothing else. I sat down in the dark and took out the metal box. The letters were still there, folded, unread. I unfolded the second one, the one where I wrote about being afraid. I read it by the light of a dying lamp and thought about the boy who wrote those words. The boy who thought fear was the worst thing that could happen to him. That boy was stupid. Fear is nothing. Fear is easy. You get used to fear. What you do not get used to is watching friends die, is killing men who look like boys, is the smell of rotting bodies in sealed tunnels, is the knowledge that every breath you take is one breath closer to the last one. I took out my pencil. It was down to a stub. On the back of the letter, I wrote new words. I am not afraid anymore. I am beyond fear. I am beyond everything except the desire for this to end. I do not care how it ends. I just want it to stop. A sound in the darkness. Boots on stone. I put the letter away, picked up my knife, waited. An American Marine came around the corner. Young. Maybe my age. He had a flashlight in one hand and a rifle in the other. He saw me. I saw him. For 1 second, we just stared at each other. 2 boys in the dark. 2 boys who should have been home. 2 boys who were about to kill or be killed because old men in distant capitals had decided this island mattered. He raised his rifle. I threw the knife. It hit him in the throat. His rifle fired, but the bullet went wild. He fell backward, choking, drowning in his own blood. I crawled over to him. He was still alive. His eyes were wide, terrified. His hands clutched at his throat, trying to stop the blood. I could have taken my knife back, could have ended it quickly. I did not. I took his rifle, took his ammunition, took his flashlight. Then I left him there to die alone in the dark, because that is what war makes you into. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a thing that survives by making other things stop living. By the beginning of March, there were maybe 5,000 of us left. 5,000 out of 21,000. The rest were dead, or dying in sealed tunnels we could no longer reach, or scattered across the island in positions that had been overrun. We had no food, no water, no medical supplies, no ammunition except what we could take from dead Americans. Command sent down final orders. Prepare for banzai attack. All remaining forces to assemble for final charge. Some men were relieved. Finally, an end. Finally, permission to die fast instead of slow. Others were angry. We had held for 3 weeks. Why waste ourselves now? I felt nothing. I sat in the tunnel and cleaned the American rifle I had taken and waited for orders. The man next to me was writing a letter. His hand shook so badly the characters were barely readable. "Who are you writing to?" I asked. "My son. He is 4 years old." He kept writing. "I am telling him to be strong, to take care of his mother, to remember that his father died with honor." He folded the letter, put it in his pocket. "It will never reach him," I said. "I know, but I had to write it anyway." He looked at me. "Did you write to anyone?" I touched the metal box on my belt. "Yes." "Good. It matters. Even if they never read it, it matters that we tried to say goodbye." The Banzai attack was scheduled for March 9th at dawn. 2,000 men would charge from the tunnels straight into American positions, bayonets and grenades in desperation. We would kill as many as we could before they killed us. It was suicide. It was also orders. The night before, I wrote my final letter. "Mother," I wrote, "tomorrow I will die. I know this with certainty. There is no escape, no miracle, no last-minute rescue. I am not sad about this. I am tired, so tired. I want to sleep. I want this to end. Please forgive me for not coming home. Please forgive me for the things I have done. Please remember me not as I am now, but as I was before. The boy who picked flowers for you. The boy who smiled. That boy is dead. He died the day I stepped onto this island." I folded the letter, put it in the metal box with the others. Then I lay down on the stone floor and closed my eyes and waited for dawn. When it came, I was ready. The Banzai attack never happened, not the way they planned it. At 3 in the morning on March 9th, 6 hours before we were supposed to charge into American guns and die like we had been ordered, Lieutenant Hayashi came into our section of the tunnel. He was 26 years old. He had fought in China. He had scars across his face from shrapnel. He had always followed orders without question. He stood in front of the 37 men left in our company and said 4 words that should have gotten him executed. "I cannot do this." We stared at him. "The Banzai attack is suicide," he said quietly. "Not honorable death, just suicide. We will die in minutes. We will kill maybe a dozen Americans. Then it will be over, and we will have achieved nothing." His voice shook, but he kept talking. "I have a different order. My order. Stay in the tunnels. Fight from the shadows. Make them dig us out one position at a time. Make this island cost them not 2,000 men in one morning, but 2,000 days of bleeding." Someone said, "That is disobedience." "Yes," Hayashi said, "it is." Another voice, "They will execute you. They will have to find me first." He looked at each of us. "I am not ordering you to follow me. I am asking, if you want to die in a Banzai charge, I will not stop you. If you want to live long enough to kill more Americans, stay here." Then he turned and walked deeper into the tunnel. 23 men followed him. I was one of them. 14 men stayed behind. They would join the Banzai attack at dawn like they had been ordered. They would die with honor. They would be remembered as loyal soldiers who followed commands to the end. We would be remembered as cowards, if we were remembered at all. At dawn, we heard the attack begin. Even deep in the tunnels, we heard it. 2,000 men screaming as they charged from their positions. The roar of American machine guns. The explosions of grenades. The sound of men dying in waves. It lasted 18 minutes. 18 minutes and 2,000 Japanese soldiers were dead. The tunnel went silent. One of the men who had followed Hayashi was crying. Not loud, just tears running down his face in the lamplight. "We are supposed to be out there," he whispered. "But we are here," Hayashi said, "and now we fight our way." For the next 6 weeks, we became ghosts. We moved through the deepest tunnels, the ones the Americans had not found yet. We survived on rainwater that dripped through cracks in the rock. We ate rations we stripped from dead men, Japanese and American both. We slept in shifts in the dark and did not dream because dreams required hope. We attacked at night, small groups, 3 or 4 men. We would crawl out of hidden tunnel entrances, kill sentries, steal supplies, disappear before the Americans knew we had been there. We killed them in their sleep. We killed them when they went to relieve themselves. We killed them when they smoked cigarettes away from their units. We killed them quietly with knives and wire and our bare hands when we had nothing else. They called us the ghosts of Iwo Jima. I know this because we found it written on a wall in an American position we raided. Someone had spray painted it in English, warning the others, beware the ghosts. By the end of March, there were maybe 300 Japanese soldiers still alive on the island. 300 out of 21,000. The Americans controlled everything. The airfields, the beaches, the mountain. They flew their bombers from our runways. They built hospitals in our caves. They walked on ground where 20,000 of my countrymen were buried in collapsed tunnels and shallow graves. But they could not sleep safely, because we were still there. One night in early April, my group was 5 men. We attacked an American supply depot near the southern beach. We killed 2 sentries. We stole medical supplies, ammunition, and food. We were retreating back to the tunnel when we ran into an American patrol. 7 of them. 5 of us. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. When it was over, 4 Americans were dead. 3 of us were dead. 2 Americans were wounded. 2 of us were wounded. I was one of the wounded. The bullet went through my side just above my hip. It felt like someone had shoved a burning stick through my body. I fell, could not get up, could not breathe. The other survivor from my group was Private Yoshida. He was 18 years old. He had been on the island for 2 months. He dragged me toward the tunnel entrance. The wounded Americans were shouting for help. More Americans would come soon. Yoshida got me to the tunnel mouth, started to pull me inside. Then he stopped. I looked up at him. He was staring at something behind us. A dozen American Marines had arrived. They had rifles pointed at us. They were shouting in English. I did not understand the words, but I understood the meaning. Surrender. Yoshida looked down at me. His face was very young, very scared. I am sorry, he said. Then he raised his hands above his head. The Americans rushed forward. They kicked our rifles away. They pulled Yoshida away from me. They put their hands on me, and I screamed because the wound was on fire and everything was spinning. One of them, a medic I think, pressed something against my side. The pain doubled. I think I passed out. When I woke up, I was not dead. This was the biggest shock of all. Not the pain, not the fact that I was captured. The shock was that I had expected to wake up in whatever comes after death, and instead I woke up in an American field hospital. There were rows of cots, wounded men on all of them. Most were Americans, but some were Japanese. POWs, prisoners of war. I tried to sit up, could not. My side was bandaged. My wrists were tied to the cot frame with cloth restraints. A Japanese voice nearby. Do not struggle. You will tear the stitches. I turned my head. In the next cot was an older Japanese soldier, maybe 40. His arm was in a sling. Where are we? I asked. American hospital. You were shot. They operated on you. You survived. Why? He smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Because the war is over, at least for us. Over the next 3 days, I learned what had happened. The battle for Iwo Jima was finished. The Americans had declared the island secure on March 26th. More than 6,000 Americans had died. Nearly 21,000 Japanese had died. Out of the entire garrison, only 216 Japanese soldiers had been taken prisoner. I was number 217. The rest were dead, buried in the tunnels, burned by flamethrowers, shot in their positions, blown apart by artillery. Dead. All dead. I should have been dead with them. Instead, I was lying in an American hospital while American doctors saved my life for reasons I could not understand. On the 5th day, they moved us to a larger POW camp on the northern end of the island. We were given clean clothes, given food, given water that did not taste like sulfur. We were also given paper and pencils. For letters, the American officer said through a translator, to your families, to let them know you are alive. I stared at the paper. Alive. I took the pencil. It felt strange in my hand, like something from a previous life. I tried to write, Mother, I am alive. The words would not come. My hand shook. The pencil fell. I could not do it. I could not write those words because they felt like a betrayal of the men who had died, of Takeshi crushed under the rock, of the sergeant who wanted rice, of the 14 men who had followed orders and died in the bonsai charge while I hid in the tunnels. I was alive and they were dead, and I did not know how to explain that to anyone, least of all my mother. That night, I took out the metal box. It was still on my belt when the Americans captured me. They had searched it, found the letters, given it back. Maybe they thought the letters were not important. Maybe they did not care. I opened it. The 3 letters were still there, creased, stained, but whole. I read them by the light coming through the tent flap. The first letter, the boy who still believed in miracles. The second letter, the boy who had accepted fear. The third letter, the boy who was ready to die. I read them and did not recognize myself in any of them. That boy was gone. Those boys were gone. All of them had died on the island in different ways, and what was left was something new. Something I did not have a name for yet. I took out the pencil they had given me, took out a fresh piece of paper. This would be the 4th letter, the one I never planned to write. Mother, I wrote, I survived. I do not know why. 20,800 men died on this island, and I did not. There is no reason, no logic, no divine plan, just chance, just luck, just the difference between a bullet hitting 6 inches to the left instead of where it hit. I survived, and I do not know if I deserve to. I killed men, Japanese men who I left to die because I took their supplies and did not help them. American men who were boys just like me, who had mothers just like you, who died because I put a knife in their throat or a bullet in their chest. I did things that cannot be forgiven. I became something that cannot be called human, and now the Americans have saved my life, and I do not understand why. I do not understand any of this. All I know is that I am alive and they are dead, and I will carry their weight for the rest of my days, however long or short those days may be. I folded the letter, put it in the box with the others. 4 letters now. 4 different versions of the same boy watching himself die in different ways. The war ended 4 months later. Japan surrendered on August 15th, 1945. The Emperor's voice on the radio telling us the war was lost, telling us to endure the unendurable. I was still in the POW camp when I heard it, still on Iwo Jima, still on the island that had killed 20,000 of my countrymen. Some of the prisoners wept, some were relieved, some did not react at all. I felt nothing. The war had already ended for me on the day I woke up in the American hospital and learned I was not dead. They sent us home in October. We boarded American ships, crossed the Pacific, landed in Japan to find our cities destroyed, our people starving, our country occupied by the same men we had tried to kill. I went back to Nagoya, back to the small house where my mother lived. She was standing in the doorway when I walked up the path. She looked older, thinner. Her hair had gone gray. She saw me, and her hand went to her mouth, and she made a sound I will never forget. Not a scream, not a cry, just a sound of disbelief that her son was real. I walked to her. She touched my face like she was afraid I would disappear. I thought you were dead, she whispered. I should be. She pulled me inside, fed me, washed my clothes, did not ask questions about where I had been or what I had done. That night, I gave her the metal box. I told her what was inside. 4 letters, 4 versions of her son dying. She opened it, read the first letter, then the second, then the third, then the 4th. When she finished, she was crying. She folded the letters carefully, put them back in the box, closed it. Then she handed it back to me. Keep them, she said. They are not for me. They are for you. I did not understand. Someday, she said, you will need to remember who you were, all the versions. The scared boy, the angry boy, the broken boy, the survivor. Keep the letters. Remember them all. I kept the box. For 79 years, I kept it. I never opened it again until today, until my grandson asked about the war, and I knew it was time to stop hiding from the boy I used to be. Now the letters are spread on the table between us. 4 pieces of paper, 4 ghosts. Kenji looks at me. His face is very serious. Grandfather, he says, did you do bad things in the war? I look at him. This boy who will never know hunger, who will never know fear, who will never have to choose between honor and survival. Yes, I say, very bad things. Do you regret them? I think about this. Really think about it. I regret that they were necessary. I regret that war makes them necessary. I regret that young men are still sent to islands and deserts and jungles to do bad things to other young men. But do I regret surviving? No. Kenji nods slowly. What happened to the other men, he asks. The ones who followed Lieutenant Hayashi. Most died. In the tunnels. In ambushes. From infected wounds. From starvation. Out of the 23 who followed him into the deep tunnels, only 7 survived to be captured. I was one of the 7, and Lieutenant Hayashi. He died on April 21st, shot by an American patrol. He killed 4 of them before they killed him. He disobeyed orders to save our lives, and he died anyway. But some of us lived because of his choice. I do not know if that makes him a hero or a coward, or something in between. Kenji picks up the 4th letter, the one I wrote in the POW camp. Can I read this one? I hesitate, then nod. He reads it silently. When he finishes, he looks at me. You say here that you do not deserve to survive. Yes. Do you still believe that? I look at this boy, my daughter's son. He exists because I survived, because I came home, because I lived long enough to have a family. If I had died on Iwo Jima, he would never have been born. 20,000 men died so that island could be taken. Their deaths bought time, bought runways for American bombers, bought a stepping stone toward Japan. Their deaths had purpose, even if they did not choose it. My survival had no purpose except chance. But from that chance came my daughter, and from my daughter came Kenji, and from Kenji will come other lives, other chances, other purposes. Maybe that is enough. I survived. I tell him, I did not deserve it. But I survived, and I spent 79 years trying to make that survival mean something. I do not know if I succeeded, but I tried. Kenji carefully folds the letter, puts it back in the box with the others. Thank you for showing me these, he says. Why? Because now I understand. War is not glorious. It is not an adventure. It is just young men dying for old men's mistakes. He looks at the letters. I will remember this. I will tell my children, so that maybe someday no one else has to write letters like these. I put my hand on the box. Inside are 4 ghosts. 4 versions of a boy who died in different ways on an island made of black sand and blood. I am 98 years old. I am the last survivor of my unit, the last one who remembers their names, the last one who carries their weight. Soon I will die, and the weight will disappear with me. But not yet. Not today. Today I am still here, still remembering, still carrying the metal box that holds 4 letters written by a boy who thought he would never become an old man. He was wrong. He became an old man. And now, finally, after 79 years, he has opened the box and let the ghosts out. They will never go back in. But maybe that is what they needed all along. Not to be forgotten, not to be buried, just to be remembered, even if only by the boy who survived them.